Okay. Yeah. Good. Well, it's a good start. I mean, it's not like Rainier. I've done Rainier a bunch, so.
All right, guys.
I'm interested to hear his perspective.
So welcome to seminar for climbing the Cascade Volcanoes. We're broadcasting live. Hello, multitudes of people out there who are watching us and did not drive to Sacramento. That's okay. I'm here with a few members, and we're going to discuss climbing the Cascade Volcanoes tonight. We're going to do a little sound check. Looks like we have sound and picture. So our presentation will probably last about an hour or so. We're going to do introductions first of people that are here, and then afterward we're going to edit the video so that it starts at the very beginning of the presentation. We're going to take a little break here for a second. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to get myself off here. Well, we're definitely broadcasting.
We're broadcasting and watching at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're back. Okay, great. So let's go around our vast audience and meet each other and just, what are you guys interested in learning about the Cascade Volcanoes? And that'd be great. So we'll start with you, Ryan, like experience and anything in particular.
I'm Ryan. I've only climbed Shasta of all the Cascade volcanoes. They all seem like amazing mountains, and I'm interested in climbing them, so I'm looking to learn more.
Just learn more about where they are and what the options are out there.
Yeah, more details.
All right, excellent.
I'm Greg Christensen. I've climbed everything from all over the world. I've climbed on Everest. I've climbed Mount Rainier many times. Rock climbed all over the Sierras. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I did not know that. Great, cool. Okay, so in about 5 seconds, we're going to start the show. So Scott, my tech, told me that I should do something to make sure that the show is going to start. So I'm going to come over and be like, start. All right, here we are at seminar climbing the Cascade Volcanoes. I'm Darren from the Sierra Mountaineering Club. This is about an hour-long presentation about information about routes and mountains that are available in the United States from the border of Canada down to California. Let me hit the next slide. So the first thing that we'll want to start with is, what are the Cascade Volcanoes? Of course. So yes, they're volcanoes. Why are they called the Cascade Volcanoes? Well, because they're part of a mountain chain that is part of the North Cascades and also part of the Ring of Fire. So the North Cascades are more rocky peaks. The Cascade Volcanoes are more of the spot where the Pacific Plate dives underneath the North American Plate. And of course, that, if you remember from geology, that creates an upwelling of magma that creates a cone. And the way that these form on this part of the world is it creates stratovolcanoes, which are layers of pumice, pyroclastic debris, and rock. And because it's really sticky and not runny like Hawaiian volcano lava, it actually builds up cones instead of a broad shield. So that's how it creates these perfectly pointy cinder cones that we have in some places here in the Northwest and down here in California. So here's a couple pictures of some of them. This one is Shasta, that one's Rainier. There's some interesting threats that happen because of our proximity to these volcanoes. You guys know what a lahar is? Anybody? What's a lahar?
Like an ash flow.
Yeah, the ash flow.
Yeah, a lahar is ash, melted water and mud that comes down. When the glaciers get superheated, they'll collapse and melt, turn into a high-angle mud flow that flows down the valley. And then there's the pyroclastic debris, which is basically an explosion equal to a number of atomic bombs in power, sort of like what happened to Mount St Helens in 1980. This one in particular, Mount Rainier being the big one, as representative of the others, it had thousands of different eruptions that build it up and cut it down and build it up and cut it down. So they're always in the process of building themselves up and blowing themselves apart, in addition to the erosion of glaciers. So Some of them were a lot higher in the past than they are now, like Mount St. Helens again. But Mount Rainier, for example, was about 16,000 feet at one time, and it's 14,400 right now. So let's go on to the next one, this little geology. Where are these mountains? So if we start at the top, we're going to begin with Mount Baker, which is right outside of Bellingham. It's about 50 miles from the ocean. Then move down the inland North Cascades to Glacier Peak. Next, of course, Mount Rainier, the Big Daddy. And on the flanks of Mount Rainier, a little-known volcano remnant called Little Tahoma Peak, which actually goes all the way to 11,000 feet. Worthy summit in its own right. Then Mount St. Helens, I've already mentioned too much, and Mount Adams, which is just across the way from Helens and just south of Rainier, kind of a mini Rainier. Let's head to the next one. Then moving down the coast, that takes us to Oregon, of course, and Mount Hood, which is Oregon's highest volcano. All of the mountains involved, all of the volcanoes in Oregon are 11,000 feet or even much lower. And there's quite a host of them. So next down the line, Mount Jefferson, which is the second highest. Then a whole bunch of broken volcanoes that are smaller and in some ways less interesting, but still part of the group. Three Finger Jack, Mount Washington, you can read the list here with me, Broken Top, all the way down to Mount McLaughlin. But you can see from Shasta, across the border, of course, Shasta, and then the southernmost one would be Lassen Peak at 10,000 feet. So the relative elevation of these mountains, Baker's at 10, Glacier's at 10, Rainier's at 14, and then we've got Adams at 12, St. Helens at like 8 now. Hood's at 11, Jefferson's, I don't remember, somewhere around 10, I think, or possibly 9, but all these are 9s, 8s, and 7s. And then Mount Shasta is back up to 14 again. And then Lassen at 10. So really, if you look at the highest peaks, the ones that are the most coveted for the same reasons, it would be Shasta, Rainier. Those are the two big ones, 14ers. And then the next highest peak is basically Hood at 11,000 feet and Adams at 12. So Shasta and Rainier are way higher in terms of height, well, of course, and also girth and sorts of glaciers. But they all have their particular benefits, I guess you could say, things that people are attracted to. Let's go to the next one. And if you guys have questions anywhere along the way, let me know. So talking about what it takes to climb them, because we've got such a diversity in height and also latitude, it changes the nature of the mountains. For example, Mount Baker, which is just stone's throw from Canada, is a really glaciated, icy, cold peak. Whereas Lassen not only is lower in elevation, but also warmer, still gets a lot of snow, but it's 4,000 feet lower and doesn't really have any, it has no glaciers. So some of these volcanoes require you to climb about 2,000 feet. Some require you to climb like 10,000 feet, for example, Rainier, okay? Many require climbing bad rock. You know, as I reviewed the information about this, it was funny because the author, and I'll show you the book in a second, I forgot to pull it out here. I'll have to go off camera and grab it. I apologize. He kept saying, well, this mountain has exceptionally bad rock. And then he'd go to the next mountain. He said, well, this mountain has really bad rock. And the mountain after that was, this mountain has got the worst rock of all. I'm like, they all have bad rock. They're volcanoes. So almost all the routes, if they involve rock climbing, is bad. There's bad protection. It's on scree slopes, and you can't really keep yourself safe. Also, rock fall is a big danger. So much of the climbing on the Cascade volcanoes is snow, ice, glacier climbing. You're going to need some good route finding skills. Some of the routes are somewhat complicated because volcanoes are very similar on all sides. They can be a little bit monotonous and hard to figure out, like whether you're actually on Ridge A or Ridge B or on Ridge C on the other side. I also recommend that you don't climb any of these alone, except for the easy routes on the smaller peaks. So get some partners. That's why Sierra Mountaineering Club is here, to help us find each other and climb these peaks together. And many of these mountains that are listed we've done as a club and will continue to do. The good book. Okay, I'm going off camera for a second. Excuse me, I'm going to go grab this. The book that you will want to get is, this may be an older version, but it's Climbing the Cascade Volcanoes by Jeff Smoot. Let's Come in close so you can see it. There you go. Nice. Okay, that's the one I recommend. Did I steal the information from this book for this PowerPoint? Absolutely. He's the authority. So I've basically summarized what's in here for you. So pick that one up. And then you're going to need some time. I mean, even if you were to do them all, we've talked about this epic trip many times in the club, where we're going to go to Baker and we're going to hit them all on a road trip, come down the coast, hit them all. That would take like months, because some of them are quite remote and they're different. You got to have permits for all of them. You could, I don't know, you could probably do it if you just hit it hard and just didn't stop. You could probably do them all in about a month and a week or so, a month and 2 weeks maybe, but most people will take quite a while to do this, and I think that's probably the better way to go. So this year and most typical years, SMC will climb Rainier, Hood, Shasta, those three for sure, and Lassen, of course, since it's close. We've also been on Thielsen and Jefferson, and this year we climbed Adams. And some members of ours have been on other peaks like Baker and St Helens and so on. So we'd like to get them all in due course. So stick with us. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a fact. Being with people climbing these volcanoes like Shasta and Rainier, they're two of the biggest ones. It's some of the hardest work that some people have ever done. It's really endurance dependent, and it's a lot of difficult climbing in terms of how high and persistent it is to get to the summit. So you need to keep going for a long time. You need to have, an exercise program in place, possibly, especially for the big ones that are over 10,000. And just remember, when you get up to a certain elevation above 10,000, you're going to not only you'll be tired, but you also have less oxygen at that elevation. So you have to take that into account. Let's go through our mountains now. I think that we're going to start with Baker. Let's head to the next slide. So for most of the mountains, I have one slide. For some of them, the really popular ones like Rainier and Shasta, I've got more slides, also due to the fact that we've done multiple presentations on these peaks. So there'll be more information on some than others. But we start with Mount Baker, almost 11,000. It's kind of like a Mount Hood. It's got significant glaciers on it, pretty icy, like I mentioned, 50 miles from Bellingham Bay. So it gets hit by all these wet, moist storms that come off the Pacific. And it and Rainier have been vying for the world record snowfall for years. It flips, flops back and forth. It's got some interesting history and has some peculiarities, like this sky to sea race where they start on Baker and then they race down the mountain and then they jump in, but they go from skis to like boots and they jump in canoes and paddle down the river and then they come all the way out to the bay. The normal route is the Coleman Glacier. It's about 6 to 8 hours, and all of these estimates are going to be from a high base camp. So there would still be an approach to come in to Baker. It's nearby some other amazing peaks that are not volcanic, like Mount Shuxon, which is actually often climbed at the same time. So at some point, I really hope that the club is going to climb this peak. I'd like to be there. I don't know, we don't have it on the schedule for this year or next year, but it can get done, and it's one that we should do, considering it's one of the iciest volcanoes. When I remembered that part, I was like, oh, we're going to go there. I want to do that. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, so Glacier Peak. Have you guys heard of this one?
Mm-hmm.
You have heard of it? Okay, so most people don't know that there is a wilderness volcano that's a little deeper in the North Cascades, and this is it. It's pretty heavily eroded. That's why it's only 10,000 anymore. And it has the distinction of having long approaches. So it's not one that you can do in a day. You cannot drive your car. The closest roads are like at least 8 miles away, and most approaches are all 10 or more. Some are 20. The normal route is the Sitcombe Glacier, as indicated there. And so, again, it's like a mini Rainier. Due to its remote nature, there have been some incidents out there, and rescue is difficult. So just be prepared for that if you choose to climb this mountain. One nice thing about it, although it's one of the most dormant volcanoes in the chain, it has nice hot springs that's on the way in. So that's a plus for your 20-mile boot-pounding hike into Glacier Peak. All right, let's go to the next one, which is going to be Mount Rainier. So a couple key things about it. I already mentioned its height at 14,410. Having 25 glaciers on it definitely gives it some status. And it's got the most ice of any place south of Alaska. So a lot of good stuff there. Let's go on to the next slide. It is one of the world's most massive volcanoes. Shasta is a little bigger in circumference, but Rainier has incredible bulk. If you look at the mountain, you can see that if you were to draw the slopes, I don't want to get in the way, but if you were to draw the rest of the mountain, you can see how it was once, about 16,000. This is 14 here. This is 5,000 here, so this is 10,000 feet of elevation gain. So I could easily see another 2 on here. But obviously, it's gone now, right? It blew itself, it blew its little cap right off. And Rainier actually has 3 different summits: Point Success, Liberty Cap, and Cascade Crest, or the actual summit here. So a complicated mountain with a lot of routes on it. And it rises, it's got amazing prominence. So it rises basically 10,000 feet, give or take some, depending on where you measure. So let's go to the next one. So the world record snowfall that it had at one point was 93.5 feet. So that's pretty awesome. That's at Paradise at 5,000 feet. So I don't know what was happening at 14,000 feet the year that that happened, but it must have been phenomenal. It also has the distinction of having the world's largest glacier cave. So this summer, when we climbed it, for the first time, I actually saw the steam vents on the crater and kind of figured out where those were on the southwest side. Those steam vents are melting the glacial ice cap all the time and creating these tunnels. And inside there, there's actually a glacier lake that's in the summit that you can get to if you have the inclination to really go down into the tunnels and brave that environment. 10,000 people attempt it annually, but only 50% do it or successfully climb to the top, mostly due to fitness and weather. A lot like Hood and Shasta, but it's tougher. It's probably the toughest of all the Cascade volcanoes, and therefore the big prize. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so like the others, it's going to take a lot of fitness and cardio. You're going to be challenged by the routes. They all involve glacier travel. Even the easy route is pretty difficult, especially nowadays as the glaciers have been subsiding. There's been a number of drought winters in Washington. The DC route that the SMC team climbed this July had 6 or 7 ladders on it already, where it would have been impassable otherwise, crossing really large crevasses. And when we climbed it in 2012, it had none the same time of year. So the glaciers have gotten more broken. So the routes have become even more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. And of course, you need real glacier travel and crevasse rescue skills to climb this one. So let's head to the next. Here's a couple of red tape things. Like Shasta, you have to use blue bags. You need to register with the National Park System. Like Shasta, again, there is a fee to climb it. And make sure you get all the requisite permits and reservations. Let's go on to the next one. So a little topography of Rainier. This would be the south side where most of the folks arrive. The Paradise Visitor Center is here. This is the Sunrise Visitor Center. The main route goes right up through here to Camp Muir and then comes through Cathedral Gap to the Emmons Glacier and on up to the summit. Some of the other routes that SMC has climbed are the Couts, which is over here. And hopefully next year we get to do Liberty. And we're also looking at doing Emmons from this side. And then I've personally climbed the Tahoma from this side twice also. And there's dozens of routes on it. Let's go to the next one here. Yeah.
Are there routes where there's no extreme glacier travel, climbing over ladders, walking ladders?
Our question was, are there any routes on Rainier where there's no extreme glacier travel, i.e. ladders? Yes, the DC route earlier in the year, like in May, probably doesn't have ladders on it. That's the easiest route. Disappointment Cleveland. But because of the droughts and subsistence of the glaciers, it's just gotten harder. So there again is the mountain. Just a brief overview. So again, here's the DC route. That's Camp Muir, goes through this gap here, and then up. Emmons is the second most popular route coming in from the north. It goes to Camp Sherman, and then comes up to the top. And what's nice about that is that Emmons and Liberty Ridge, actually, you could climb those together and then come down the Emmons route, which is something I'd like the club to do in the next year or so. That'd be great. This year, what we did was we had a team come up the DC route and a team come up the Couts route, and then we both came down the DC route. So that was fantastic. We'd like to continue climbing this mountain. It's the king of the Cascades. So we'll probably be there every year. Okay, disappointing Cleaver route. So I'm just going to briefly review this because I've gone over it a couple times in different presentations, but you can read that, 90% of all the people that go up there climb this route. It's 9,000 feet, starts at Paradise. It's definitely 2 days. You should allocate 4 for weather. 1 day to Camp Muir, 1 to get up, 1 to get up and come down, 1 to get back from Camp Muir, and 1 day for weather. So we just usually take 5 days. And one nice thing about it is it's maintained by the guide services. So that makes it doable. Imagine us pitting in the ladders on Rainier. I don't think we're qualified for that.
Does RMC still have a big footprint there?
RMI, yeah.
They
sure do. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. So here's a picture of the trailhead to Camp Muir. Paradise comes through the gap. This is 10,000 feet here. This is 5,000 feet here. So that's your day 1. Let's go to the next. Here's what it looks like on the way up. Beautiful scenery, wildflowers, well-maintained trails, and the chance to camp on snow, but actually have a bathroom. That's great. Camp Muir has some historic stone huts and is at 10,200. You get very little sleep, and you wake up in the middle of the night and start climbing the next one. Whoa, that's not what we wanted.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to fix this. Hold on. I have a touch screen. Make the presentation go. That's right. All right. Oops. Moving on. That way we want to go this way. There we go. Okay, we're back. So we're moving on up the mountain from Camp Muir. So the next slides will show you the route. Okay, so this would be Camp Muir coming through the gap to Cowlitz Glacier. The Cathedral Gap here, like I said, up to the top. Actually, the route this year went like this. Woo!
Really?
Yeah. It went way over here off what they call the high break. After leaving this point, it climbed through all of these crevasses and crazy stuff over here and then came back to the main route. So here's a picture of the beginning of, we talk about crevasses, we're talking about monstrous canyons here. This is a guide services tent city here. Those are the crevasses at, what would these be at? Maybe 11,500, 12,000, something like that, 11,000 feet. They're bigger up on the mountain. Ingram Glacier with Little Tahoma Peak in the background. Very broken. Here's a picture of our team going to the summit through the route. You can see it kind of traverses some really interesting terrain. And as we climb, like it happens on Shasta a lot, there's a lot of clouds that come by because you're basically up in the atmosphere quite a good distance. So sometimes it's clear and sometimes you're climbing in a cloud. There's another picture of how big the glaciers are up there, and the crevasses. They're inspiring and humbling. So a beautiful mountain and an interesting place to be. When you get to the top, the ground on the summit is actually slightly warm, so it's melted the snow and ice there, and there's a slight smell of sulfur. You know you're on a real volcano. All right, so let's continue on to Little Tahoma now. We attempted this mountain in 2012, but got rained off. It used to be a part of Mount Rainier and actually slid down the slope. So it could have been a part of the summit cap at one point. It's only 11,000 feet, but you know it's got some real glaciers on it. From a high camp, it'll take 6 to 8 hours. The Whitman Glacier is this one over on this side right here. I'm going to come through this way and come up the back side. All of this is very steep, 5th class rotten rock, which would not be recommended. And all of the routes involve glacier travel. So 1980, Mount St. Helens. I lived in Washington State when this mountain blew up. That's where I was born. And so I remember seeing it from a distance. You can see these photos of what it looks like now with the expansive summit crater. The mountain used to be, you know, a nice, beautiful, slender cone. And now it's building itself back up again. And one interesting fact is that it used to be a little more technical before 1980. And since it's blown, it's actually become more popular and less technical. So there is actually kind of a lottery sort of waiting list for Mount St. Helens now, I discovered. I haven't climbed this one yet myself, but apparently all of the routes are fairly short and you should climb them in the snow, otherwise you'll be stuck running up lots of pumice and scree. But in about 3 1/4 miles, you can get to the top of this one. Mount Adams is a mountain, like I mentioned, that is just east of St. Helens and is still fairly active. It's got a number of glaciers, kind of like Rainier, only a little shorter, but it looks pretty identical from a distance. Kind of a squatty mountain with a blown off top, with a lot of glaciers on all sides. The rock up there, we did climb this mountain the same week we're on Rainier. The rock up there is equally horrible, but the glaciers are interesting. And I found that it was a lot more sulfurous than Rainier. It stained the picks of our ice tools yellow from climbing it. So for some reason, it's not climbed very often, even though it's 12,000 feet high. I guess it's kind of out in the woods a little bit and doesn't have the nice infrastructure and status of Rainier. But still a good mountain to climb and fairly easy from the south side. This is the route, the South Spur. And most people can do it in one day. They go kind of a high camp, and then day 2, they go to the top and come back. Doesn't require any technical climbing, but it's certainly available if you want it. So that's Adams. Okay, now to Hood. So this one is one of the coveted summits of the Northwest. I've got a couple slides here. One that I found that was showed me everything I wanted to know is that this route here on the south side of Hood is the standard way. It's called the South Side route. You can climb it in 4 to 6 hours from Timberline Lodge. Part of the route parallels a ski lift, and apparently a woman in high heels has climbed it. A monkey has climbed it. People have ridden bicycles on the summit ridge. It's easy to get to, so to speak. But because it's so accessible and it's kind of highly prized, a lot of unprepared people have attempted Hood and have not made it. The weather can be bad and it can be disorienting. And as you can see, it's actually quite cliffy and glaciated on all the other sides except for the south side. So if you go down the wrong side, it could be an issue. I guess the only other thing to say about it is that our history with Hood, we attempt it every year, and we have summited it. A lot of the times when we want to go climb it, we come over here by Illumination Rock, and our goal is to come over to the Luthold Couloir, which is a nice snow and ice climb on the west side, and gets away from the crowds over here. And sometimes, again, what we like to do is we'll come to a mountain from 2 different routes. So we'll climb the Luthold Couloir, and then we'll have another team going up the south side. We'll meet the summit and then come back down the south side together. So a great mountain with a lot of routes to climb, not too far away from Portland. Here's a picture of the routes on Hood. The lift actually goes all the way to here. So they want you to stay out of that area, of course. Once you get up to this point, you shoot for this little thing called Crater Rock. You can see this is, of course, aptly named a crater, right? This is the Devil's Kitchen. There's a lot of sulfur magic going on there. Stay out of that area, come up to the Bergschrund here, and then through the Pearly Gates up to the top. There's another route that goes through the old Glacier Notch on this side. Both of those can be done. And then Luthold Couloir would be going through this gap here on the other side and then climbing up, summiting up that side. This Illumination Rock is a really picturesque place to spend the night. And people have skied and climbed all over this mountain for many years. So it's classic. Let's go to the next one. This is another great picture I really liked because it showed it in kind of more winter conditions. It does have a glacier right here in this section where the Bergschrund normally shows up. So I've seen some pictures of Hood where people have all their skis and equipment stashed right here on the Hog's Back, and then they just make a dash for the summit through the Pearly Gates and come back down again. But what always impresses me about Hood is the amount of rime ice that is encrusted on the pinnacles up there. And it's astounding. And I've seen some crazy pictures of climbers going on these peaks through all this rime ice. So it can be, even though it's an easy mountain, you know, it can be quite a fantastic climb. So let's head to the next one. Just south of there is a mountain that I once spied from an airplane and didn't know that it existed. And I looked it up in a book and found out it's called Mount Jefferson. It's a spiny, glaciated peak, 10,497, so just a little bit shorter than Shasta. I'm sorry, than Hood. And we went and climbed it in 2013, I think. We climbed the Jefferson Park Glacier Route, which was semi-technical. And it's a little more remote. It has the distinction of a somewhat formidable summit pinnacle that requires 4th class climbing or 5th class, depending on which route you attempt. And kind of scary and loose. So as the book says, that's not really why you would climb Jefferson. That's what you have to do to get to the summit. The why is that all the other beautiful routes around it, they're forested. There's not that many people there. And you get to travel through some interesting country mixed with glaciers and beautiful meadows. So Whitewater Glacier is the most popular, 10 to 12 hours. That would be from high camp, but it would definitely take you a day to get to the Whitewater Glacier high camp. All right, so let's go on to the next one.
Is Whitewater Glacier in that photo?
A portion of it is right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe this is the east side, and I'm pretty sure this is the south side, but I've only been there once, and I wasn't on either of those sides. Mostly this presentation is just to give you guys information about the mountains and just so you can say, hey, I like that one, and then go do the research on your own, you know? So this is just kind of a teaser in a way. So now we're gonna go to the lesser Oregon volcanoes. Still interesting, all fairly short and accessible, but have an interesting character. All the rock is bad. Some of them are very broken, and others are quite sharp. Three-Finger Jack happens to be one of them that is quite eroded and broken, but the erosion-resistant part of it, like Thielsen, really is quite craggy. So apparently it's got, 3 crags and quite a colorful mountain as well. So it can be done in a day, and it's right next to the sisters, the 3 sisters. It's a little bit east of it and really proximate to Bend, Oregon. So let's hit the next one. Mount Washington, I'm not familiar with this mountain. I don't know if I've even seen it. But from what the book says, it's around that same height. It's got, like Thielsen, it's got this plug of basalt that's welled up, and the rest of the mountain that's been eroded wasn't as resistant. So it ended up with this kind of needle type thing, needle-shaped summit. So fourth class to get there, still loose rock, and somewhat steep on that one side. The North Ridge is the only recommended trail. So, okay, Three Sisters. These are probably the next most interesting to me because there's a lot of routes there that can be climbed. You can see they're lined up here. There's a north, a middle, and a south. They're all about 10,400. Most of the climbing on them and or skiing is on ridges or couloirs. Some of the climbing is on rock, but it's not very recommended. So that's why climb it when it's frozen, because rock fall is a big danger on this mountain. But there are a lot of routes. I mean, there's a lot of interesting ways to climb these three, and you can traverse them all apparently in a day, a very long day. So that sounds fun. Let's do it in winter on skis. So Broken Top, just south of there, is aptly named, pretty steep, requires class 4 and some scree to get to the top. One interesting thing about it is that because it's so worn and fractured, you can actually see the stratification of different layers of eruptions inside some portion of the summit. So I think, like a lot of the other broken ones, it's always best to climb it when it's snowy or frozen. So sounds like late winter is a great time to go climb some of these shorter volcanoes in Oregon. Seems like it'd be a great expedition for the club to do in like April. That'd be awesome. So let's go to the next one. Mount Bachelor is mostly famous because it has a ski area, okay, which I haven't been to. It only gets like 2 pages in the book, so it doesn't have much, preeminence. Fairly simple to climb. You can climb it right off the road. You just get off the road and head up. So there's nothing technical about it. It happens to be 9,000 feet tall, and of course, it's probably a good ski. Interestingly enough, there is a small glacier remnant on the north side. It would be fun to find. So that's Bachelor. Then there's Thielsen, which is probably one of the more interesting ones. What was that? Washington, that had that basaltic intrusion that left on the top. This one is much more needle-like, and so for whatever reason, it gets struck by lightning like more than any other Cascades peak. And there's these particular rocks that are created when lightning strikes the ground. It creates this sort of a thing. I forget what it's called, something like pyrogamites or something like that. And there are a lot of them here. The rock is, of course, loose, and the summit pinnacle is kind of 4th, 5th class. One interesting thing that happened recently was some hardcore ice/mixed climbers put up a route on the north face, which was a super difficult, somewhat dangerous route. So there is still new terrain out there to be climbed, apparently, in the Cascades. Let's go to the next one. And then McLaughlin, which you can see from Shasta, or if you're heading up to Bend, like we've done a couple times when we go to climb Smith Rock or Mount Hood, McLaughlin is very prominent off to the left. It's a somewhat shapely, as you can see, cone-shaped mountain, but not very difficult, not very high. It's a good little hike. The first peak you're going to get to, or the last one you're going to finish, if you're moving up or down the coast in Oregon, up or down the range. Let's go to the next one, which would be in California, which is now Mount Shasta. So again, I have a few more slides for Shastas. We've talked about it a lot. We talked about it in its own slideshow. We talked about it on the 14er slideshow, and now it's in the Cascade Volcanoes slideshow. So I'm not going to be as prolific with the details as I was before, but a couple key things to know. Again, it's the highest except Rainier. It's actually comprised of a number of different cones. You can see little Shastina over here, but the main mountain is quite big in circumference. It's quite prominent at 98,822, and it's going to take a few days to get up there. So it's not an easy one to do. At least 2 days. So some legalities for it, like Rainier, it's going to cost you some money to get up there. You're going to need to use blue bags, and you need to fill out a free wilderness permit to get there. Group size limit is 10. What are some things you need to know? I would say that kind of like Rainier, that there's a lot of snow and ice routes. All routes involve snow climbing of some sort, all the good routes anyway. And there are some real glaciers on the north side. It can be difficult to find your way, and weather can happen on Shasta just as quickly as it can on Rainier, since it's got so much prominence. The weather that's predicted for the town at the base of the mountain, called Mount Shasta, is not really a good indicator of what's going to be happening 7,000 feet higher. So high winds, low visibility, snowstorms any time of the year, that's all possible. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so the normal route on Shasta would be right here through Avalanche Gulch. It's non-glaciated, so it's best to climb that early in the year. Some of the other routes you can see radiate around the mountain and are on the glaciers. Some of our favorites in the club, aside from Avalanche Gulch, would be Cascade Ridge, the West Face, Whitney Glacier, Hotland Glacier, and the Hotland-Bolam Ridge. So many ways to have fun on this mountain. Here's our look at it, kind of a 3D view. This would be base camp at Lake Helen, where from here it's about 4,000 feet to the top and back. To get to that point, you'd have to leave the day before at the trailhead at Bunny Flat down here. So that's the main way, up and back. Once again, Cascade Ridge, West Face, and then there's Sargent's and Green Butte over here, which are also great routes. On the north side, we've got the Whitney Glacier. We've got Shastina with an interesting crater lake there. Then the Bolam and the Hotland Glacier, Bolam Glacier Ridge line comes in, right there. With Marine Camp, my arm isn't long enough, with Marine Camp, which is right here. It's a great place to camp on the north side. Here's an actual photo. So Marine Camp, Whitney Glacier, you can see all of the annotations here. The Hotland-Bolam Ridge is a nice recommended route that's a lot like Avalanche Gulch, but without all the people. So if you make it to Marine Camp the first day, day 2 you can leave early and climb through this gap right here to a table that overlooks the Bolam and Hotland glaciers, and come up through the Cat's Ears to the Shark's Fin, the Fumaroles, and up to the top from there. And then you can come right back down the same way. Let's go on. So some pictures of Avalanche Gulch. This is a nice one. It shows that it's really not a steep route. Lake Helen Lake is at this prominent bench up here, and you won't miss it because there'll be 50 other tents when you go there. So the ascent takes about 7,000 feet to accomplish from the trailhead to the summit. Let's go on. There's the city there at Avalanche Gulch. There is designated bathrooms. There's no water. There's a ranger permanently staffed there. And it'll take you about 3 to 4 hours if you're in good shape. So let's take the next one. Here's the route again. So from Helen Lake, you're going to come up through the Heart to the Thumb to Misery Hill and then to the Summit Castle. And you should leave by about 3. There's the Summit Castle itself. This is after coming on Misery Hill and climbing across the plateau. The Fumaroles are more over on this side. If you climb the Hotland-Bolam Ridge, it comes up on this side here. Shasta's got a great summit pinnacle. It's one of my favorites. It's very small, and it's a great, if you take a picture from just on the other side, you can see, 10,000 feet worth of air below you and clouds drifting by. It's a fantastic shot. So that alone is worth the climb. And there it is. So good times. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, last mountain. How are we doing? Oh, we're doing great. Last one is Lassen Peak. The picture that I chose for it, I wanted to show you. I did some research and found this. In 1914, it was rumbling. In 1915, it had its big blowout, which devastated the whole north side of the mountain. These are actual photographs you can see as evidenced by the Model Ts here of that moment when it blew up. So until from 1915 to 1980, when Mount St. Helens blew up, Lassen was considered to be the big active volcano, and St. Helens stole its thunder. So I guess it's been forgotten since, but it's still very active. Gas blasts and pyroclastic debris, exactly like Helens, was what did it in. So that area is still kind of wasted, coming back. It's been, well, 100 years, right? So I haven't been on that side of the mountain, but not only that, we also know that it's active from the geothermal activity that's occurring at Lassen. There's boiling mud, there's steam vents, there's water that's boiling there, and they're getting hotter. So it's not going away. It's an active volcano. Let's go to the next one. For climbing Lassen at 10,457, not really a high mountain, and the trailhead is fairly high too, so it's really about a 3,000 foot climb. But in the winter, when a lot of us do climb it, the access is the issue, because you have to go in about 6 to 7 miles of roads to get there. If you climb it in the summer, it's really just a short trail hike up a kind of a pumice trail. But a fantastic skiing area, a lot like Shasta and Hood. So decide when you want to go. That will color your adventure. And then there's also some really interesting peaks nearby, Mount Diller and Brokoff Mountain, which, just to tell you a little bit more about geology for Lassen Peak, Lassen is actually a vent that came about 11,000 years ago on the side of an ancient volcano called Mount Tehama, which is not that long ago in geologic terms. So Mount Tehama was massive. It blew itself to pieces, kind of like Mount Mazama, where Crater Lake is. And the remnants of that crater, of that mountain, are Brokoff Mountain. So when you stand on Brokoff and look down the almost vertical north face, like 2,000 feet, you imagine what in the world shaped this mountain. Well, you're looking at the edge of ancient Mount Tehama there. And all the other parts of the landscape around Lassen are the remnants of Mount Tehama or Mount Tehama. So, a really interesting place. Probably the trail is not really the interesting thing. I think the geology is probably the interesting thing. And going up to the main trailhead, you're going to go by boiling mud and sulfur springs. So you're going to get a nice geological feast. So let's finish up. So that's it. Here we are back on Shasta, probably our favorite local Shasta Cascade volcano. Again, if you guys have any questions about these mountains, you can look up Jeff Smoot's book, or you can contact us, and we're at www.smc.club, and our website's also sierramountaineeringclub.org. And I wanted to mention that starting tonight through midnight on Labor Day, our retail partner, Bobcats Outdoors, is having a sale at 30% off everything in the store. Is that right, Gregor?
Everything in the store. I'll have the codes in. They can use coupon code for Labor Day.
Okay. So coupon codes are coming. The coupon code is Labor Day? Labor Day. Okay, the coupon code is Labor Day for all SMC members. We'll see if we can get that out in an email. So thanks for watching. And let's go to the last slide. And we'll present again in 2 weeks on our schedule. So, close broadcast.
All right. You're getting overly confident.
All right, let's go to.
Definitely try Rainier, like he said. Rainier is a